The second session at the Cost of Living Crisis Conference was called A Torn Safety Net. It was presented by a researcher at a think tank. And the basic premise was that churches and other faith groups have often operated as a safety net to society in difficult times, filling the gaps that no one else is able or willing to do. But that the current cost of living crisis is having such an impact on churches that the safety net itself is torn. And they did some research, and it recognised that many people are experiencing different aspects of financial insecurity. A lack of security at work drives this. When people move from one rented house to another, they're unable to develop deep community roots. Those who have migrated from other countries can experience deep insecurity as they don't know what's going to happen to them. Being in debt is clearly a major contributory factor to financial insecurity. It impacts individuals, but it also impacts organisations, such as churches. And their research drew some particular areas of interest. Some of the things they talked about was rising fuel costs, which has an impact on the use of buildings, the cost of petrol, making it more difficult to provide warm spaces as those are called for more and more. Inflation and the cost of food affects things such as food bank donations being reduced. There's also less surplus food from supermarkets being made available to charities. One example is that the price of biscuits, a mainstay of many church functions, has risen by 35% in the last year. As volunteering, one of the lasting impacts of the COVID furlough and lockdown is a decline in those willing to volunteer. There's an impact on giving, with the added problem that inflation leads to devaluation of donations. And it is important to recognise that if we are giving the same to churches or charities today as we have for many years, then the value of what we give is reduced. And voluntary contributions. People used to be happy to come along to church events that they were involved in, maybe toddler groups or coffee mornings or whatever, and buy things, bring biscuits, cakes or whatever, out of their own pocket for church use. And they were glad to do so. But sometimes they can no longer afford it. And they really struggle with asking churches to reimburse them. And that came out strongly in this research. If you are feeling that, please do ask us, please do talk about it, and we will sort it out. We don't want that to be an issue. While I was reflecting on these thoughts, I was aware of two things. All of the above is true. It paints a bleak picture. We need to recognise the reality of it and work to support those who are struggling. But we also serve a God of ultimate provision and generosity. We need to rest on that. We need to tell that story even through these difficult times. And we need to challenge ideas and ways of working around us in society that bring injustice and inequality. Here's a couple of quotes from the session that I found powerful to reflect on, to pray into. Church provision to their communities is precarious. It takes one dedicated volunteer to stop what they're doing, to be priced out of what they're doing, for that whole important service to the community to be lost. So if you are struggling with continuing with doing something, please come and talk about it. Second quote said, Britain's safety net is torn, so much is clear. We dare to hope that it is not torn beyond repair, but that is up to public as well as private vision and generosity. And this is something to pray into.